It's International Fight Week, UFC 290. One of the, if not the, supposed to be anyway, premier nights in all of the nights that UFC has in a calendar year. 11 years after the very first International Fight Week, is that still true? Here are three dumbasses, old as shit, none of whom are going to that event to tell you if that's true or not. That's Brian Campbell. That's the Iceman himself, Chuck Mindenhall. I'm Luke Thomas. This is the official UFC 290 pre-game preview. How we doing, gents?
I'm a little bit more fired up for the Friday night offering, July 7th, of Power Slap 3, which will be taking over.
Is that really?
That is a real thing that's happening.
Now, here's the question. Is that officially part of the Fight Week experience? Because the Fight Week experience goes from the Monday to the Sunday.
Yes.
Is it part of that?
Yes.
Wow.
You like it being tethered to the UFC, like this whole slap fight? You like that?
I don't understand what the UFC is doing half the time, candidly. So, no, that would not be my favorite thing. But here we are, boys.
Yes.
So I was digging into this a little bit. The very first International Fight Week was in 2012. And shouts to the guys. We love them. Shouts to the video about it. MMA on Point has one where they basically explained it was trying to solve a problem in Las Vegas. And the problem was for, not New Year's Eve, quite the opposite, but for 4th of July, the city was having a little bit of difficulty attracting tourism, which is obviously a huge part of their economy. So they worked with the city. They did some economic studies about what they could bring, and they were right. They ended up doing these events. They have UFC X, which is the giant expo that takes place a couple days outside of the fights. All of these pool parties and pub crawls and meet and greets and everything else, and it ended up bringing consistently year over year, with the one exception for the pandemic, a fair amount of money. Here we are, Chuck, 11 years into it. So let's ask, I should say, the basic question here. Is International Fight Week 11 years on a success?
Man, that's such a great question. The truth is, too, it seemed like a bigger deal early on, but this could be just because we used to go to this, and when the UFC was kind of coming up, it felt like a bigger deal because it did attract all that. And you would have all the legends. I don't know if you ever walked around the expo hall, but you would see everybody in there. Everybody, so it was kind of like, especially with the Hall of Fame, once it became part of it and all of that stuff, it felt like a bigger deal. This one hasn't really struck me that way yet, but I don't know if that's just because, honestly, I'm not attending it, or if it's just you get used to it or something like that. But it hasn't struck me as a big deal this year. Has it you guys? I mean, I don't really feel like they kind of, go in like they used to.
I think the events are still in place for it to feel like a major. If there are majors in the UFC calendar, right? This is certainly one of them. In fact, maybe the biggest one, maybe the go-to one, where you're like, that's an event. If I go there for the week, I get the Hall of Fame, the convention, because basically you get unadulterated fan access, which is great. But what we're really asking here is, has the card, the 1-2 and sometimes 1-2-3 punch atop the card, has that made this one, and really the last 2 or 3 combined, truly feel like a special major? I liked UFC 200, for example, when they had the yellow canvas. It felt different. They also had 3 events that week instead of just 1. I think it ultimately comes down to, if you have that main or that main and co-main combo that just screams must see, stop the presses, it's Conor, it's John Jones, it's Cormier, it's whoever is big in the moment, then it feels that way. We've got a fantastic main event. We've got a card that I think top to bottom is very good, but still might fall short of IFW comparisons. But that 1-2-3 punch or bang, that's not there this year. And, to be fair, sometimes you need that bolt of lightning in a McGregor, or that matchup like a DC Jones 2, which was supposed to be what we didn't get at 200 to really make it feel that extra. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's pretty fair. I mean, the way I would look at it is, if the UFC partnered with the city of Las Vegas to solve an economic problem, I think that I would argue that they have, if not solved it, they have meaningfully contributed to making 4th of July different in Las Vegas. I think UFC deserves a lot of credit for that. Yeah. And all of these other events that they put on, and again, these are multi-day affairs all over Las Vegas, a lot of different vendors and places who are taking part in it. So on that level, I think International Fight Week has been a grand success. The question is, year to year, how have the cards been? And they've been either really good or just inconsistent.
And they've had some bad luck with some of those
They've had
cards.
plenty
too.
of bad.
Yeah.
Like UFC 200 is a huge. Remember, that's supposed to be
Yes.
Diaz and Connor, and then that fell through. Then it was John Jones and Cormier, and then that fell through.
I wrote a story for CBS
Yes.
Sports that we actually updated, I think 3 separate times, and basically said that for 8 straight years, the main or co-main
Yeah.
that was
It felt
initially announced to bring people in was canceled or altered, and obviously UFC 200 was an all different thing altogether. But they were a little bit quicker, more nimble back in the day to say, okay, we got an issue here. Let's get Anderson Silva up in the bullpen to fight Cormier. Let's do anything to
That's true.
patch it together. Now, it feels like a very good card, but it feels like just another very good card.
Right.
I would like a return to sort of when we map out the 12-month calendar in the UFC War Room, and we're hoping, right, to have McGregor here, we're hoping to have Jones here, we're hoping to have these big ticket items. I would like to see a little bit more, advanced setting circle, put the biggest names on here to make this still feel. It may be, the numbers may all be the same travel-wise, which is really what this is about for tourism, bring people in. But in terms of that feeling giant,
Just
like
don't
that
know.
thing is coming in the summer that you can't miss. I don't know if we felt that in
I don't
3
know.
or 4
I don't even
years.
know who are the people that they could put on it to make it feel as big as it could. Like at this point in time, like if Connor's not fighting, you know what I'm saying? And if, I don't even John Jones, he's off in November. Who could they put on it? I mean,
to be fair, if this was Jones and
It's a
Stipe,
deep card,
which I
but
think
yeah.
they could have made,
Yeah.
as long as they were willing to pay for
I
it,
suppose that would feel
would
more
have
like
felt monstrous.
That
It's
would
just, here's
feel
the
more
thing.
like
Like, I want to give UFC a credit because, to your point, it's not an elite card, but it is a good card.
good
It's a very respectable card. And again, on the economic contribution front, I think UFC deserves a lot of credit. But in a world where the most recent estimates are that they're paying 13% of gross rev to the athletes, it's just like, if money is what's holding these fights up, then the UFC does deserve some blame for not being able to put some of the bigger, more marquee names into steadier rotation. I don't think that's necessarily unfair.
Right. I mean, look, if the co-main or the third fight on this card was Justin Dustin 2, as opposed to being the main event a couple weeks later in a different pay-per-view, I think you could come into here feeling that old IFW buzz
maybe.
if you added that to the group that's already there. But again, it's missing that. You asked a good question. Who are those people? It can be matchup dependent, but it also can be, if I see Holloway there, if I see Poirier there, those are the sort of brands I guess we expect, or at least I expect for IFW. I think when we had, Adesanya Cannonier last year, it felt a little bit lower than normal.
And also, that fight did not deliver.
Exactly, and that can matter too at the end of the day. I mean, we saw Adesanya Romero in the spot once not deliver, but the fight before that, if you correct me if I'm wrong, was Joanna versus Weili 1, and that certainly did. But I know we're not going to get what we got at UFC 200 in 2016 because that was about the sale, right? It was about how great can we be in this short season. But I do expect a little bit more. But with that said, do we hate this card? No. Very good pay-per-view
And in fact,
card.
it actually plays
and a main event that you got to go full mast on. How wide can I sit right now? That
Just man spread.
That would
animal.
just. I mean,
You
that, like,
low-level
put it
primate.
away.
at some point, is it illegal what I'm doing right now? I am just right now going full mast.
Just don't do what you do at the bus stop and keep your pants up.
man.
For the women's
Look at that.
for
Look at
that
that.
main event. Okay,
Big
I look
corner- big
middle aged
corner
in
go.
that position.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not.
But it does bring up like the other point about Volkanovski in general, like as a champion, 4 defenses. And I mean, the guy is just, as a featherweight, has been untouchable. The guys he's gone through, beating Max Holloway all the time, is still largely unsung.
Right.
The fact that we are talking about this right off the top, and we're not just mentioning him as that guy, as one of those guys, kind of tells you something, isn't it? It's like, it's weird with him. It's
So I'm glad you brought that up because the argument has always been, hey, look who has been a part of International Fight Week. In fact, if you go to the original 2012 one, it was the rematch between Anderson Silva and Chael Sonnen. And then you had Ronda fight on it. And then you had, I think, Weidman fight again. And you had Brock on there. Connor fought on there. So you have all these big names. Here's the interesting part. I think I'm so glad you brought this up. We return to Volkanovski and we say, oh, this is a great card, but not necessarily super thrilling. It's great. The UFC for International Fight Week is putting on what many consider to be the #1 pound-for-pound fighter on earth, defending his title back at his normal weight class. BC, shouldn't that be a cause for greater celebration than perhaps it has been?
It is. Well, look, I think this is one of those hardcore slam dunk, 10 out of 10, can't miss it. But I also think this could and will permeate to certain degrees into the crossover fan base, the Mexican champion angle, obviously with the Yair. Look, there's a lot of reasons to love this. I think what we're speaking to more is, do we have that second or third or all bang? Because there's certain fights that are bang fights. Like if you said, what could this pay-per-view have been? I mean, it could have been, to me, Justin versus Dustin, too. It could have been Adesanya versus Hamzat, something crazy like that to get the people in. This doesn't have that. You have a very good title fight in the co-main event spot that is going to be fun. It can add a lot. And you have a big name and a big star in Robert Whittaker in somewhat of a weird, interesting fight that will decide the future. And you got the Bo Nickal factor. And there's enough of a package here to say, very good pay-per-view card. I do expect great here, but as I just ended the last rant with, at least they got the main event right. So Volkanovski is only as popular as he is despite that. But this doesn't have like a hate matchup. This isn't him against Conor or something. But it's good. It's good.
It doesn't have
this is one of the 3 or 4 best fights you can make in the sport.
I think that in the past they've always tried to attract a broader group, right? Like they want that transcendent type of personality. Nobody really on this card is that, right? Like there's nobody on there that's like transcendent. So I would say that this is more like, if you're looking at it, it's a really good card, especially from a hardcore fan's perspective. I mean, this is a really good card, but it just doesn't have that sort of transcendent.
But that speaks to the ESPN deal and where they're at and what they're trying to do. That is
true, too.
5 years ago, they're still trying to have this pay-per-view in the summer that is the biggest one of the year. They're not trying to do that anymore.
All right, so let's talk about Alexander Volkanovski there. Iceman.
Sure.
Where is he heading into this? Because I think he's about 34 years of age, right? He had the loss to Makhachev, but a lot of people feel like he won it. It certainly, at a bare minimum, was a moral victory.
Yeah.
I would say that. Are people just expecting him to cruise here? He hasn't quite reached superstardom. Give me a lay of the land, aside from how infested with bugs the studio is. Give me a lay of the land of the state of Volkanovski's career. Where is he?
I mean, going back, I just hope that people, when he came out of that last fight, I thought he actually came out better than he went in. Like, I thought people really saw something in him. But it's almost like every time he fights, when he fights, it's like an astonishment. Like, you watch him, you're like, oh my God, this guy is good. But people kind of forget as you go away again, and then he comes back, and it's kind of the same thing. I do believe he's reached this part now of his career where people are expecting him to roll, especially against, he's not a woodwork contender, but he's a guy who's been around for a long time, and Yair Rodriguez, he's been around for a long time. We've seen him lose. We've seen guys who've had his number in the past. And I think that all adds up to one of those feelings of, oh, Volkanovski should just roll. He's been able to do that with guys who've beaten, Rodriguez. But it's so dangerous, man. It's just so dangerous because Yair, especially in his last couple of fights, man, he's looked very good. I think he's honed in. Like, I think he's kind of at the peak of his powers, to be honest, man. So it feels like a dangerous fight in that sense. Like, I think he wants it. And, he's went through some interesting parts of his career where I wasn't sure. So it feels like a setup in a weird way because of Volkanovski. I think, that's just my read on it. But Volkanovski, man, I mean, I feel like he's bordering on, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but bordering on historic heights, in the featherweight division.
Past that. I think he's past bordering on.
Even with in the featherweight, like, so beating Aldo and Holloway did it, like, just being able to get through those guys, or
look, I think this fight is part of that discussion. Part of that discussion is because Volkanovski has already sort of, I don't want to say shown his hand, but in recent weeks he seems to be teasing that the move to 55 full-time is inevitable. Or at the very least, his pursuit and want of a rematch against Makhachev is front of his mind. Is that more likely to happen than Holloway 4? Yes, it is. So I think for me, it's what I love about this fight outside of on paper what the matchups tell you and the excitement potential and all of that, is these are two fighters that you can argue are hitting the peak moments of their career at the exact same time, which they've come in at different times. They've been through things before. Volkanovski's already been on top. He's been on top for a while, but that loss is a win against Makhachev. And I scored it for Makhachev. It's still a win for Volkanovski because of how much he impressed us. So he's coming in like #1 pound for pound, but almost on a Superman level from what we just saw at lightweight. And Yair, on the other hand, is the most dangerous he's ever been by far, and operating at almost like a Charles Oliveira-like confidence level where you're just like, I don't know if I can put a limit at who he can't chop through. Did I think he was going to go through Josh Emmett in a round and a half? No, I didn't think it would be that that efficient, that easy. So I love that it's them peaking at the same time, but it's still also going to be, I think, a moment of closure in the featherweight run Volkanovski. And I think when I say we're past the idea of is he historically relevant, now it's just where is he? With a victory here, Luke, if it happens.
Is he a top
Is it
pound
fair
for
to
pound?
say
Like, I don't know if you do one.
We're saying, I want to ask you two questions in one here about Volkanovski, which I think echoes what you're saying. Could this put him above Aldo as the greatest featherweight of all time? Any organization? And number two, how close is Volkanovski right now from literally being in that upper room of the all-time greats? Because we did an exercise recently where I ranked my GOATs, and I had him at 10. Had him at 10, so...
Volkanovski, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think if you really break it down... Yeah.
So on the first count, greatest at featherweight, that's a tough one because it's just a definition or a question of which definition of excellence you use, which is the body of work at that weight class or individual flashes of brilliance or some combo between. I would say that I think Volkanovski is certainly a better fighter than Aldo. I don't think that is too crazy, but I'd have to really compare their reigns to say who has done more at this point. In the question of where does he rank all-time greats, I think you might be a little bit premature. Here's the thing about top 10. That's why this fight is so interesting. I completely agree with you on one thing, which was he's fighting Yair at his peak.
Right.
I mean, Yair is a really interesting case study here, where a guy who he got cut from the UFC briefly anyway, had his fits and starts, had terrible losses, had some great wins, but you kind of thought he's one of these guys who, Mexico's Makwan Amirkhani or something, right?
100%.
Right? You'd see him on those kinds of cards and then not again. And that's just not at all his trajectory. So he's fighting a really tough guy. But the thing for me is, in order for me to say that about Volkanovski, about he's really in that upper tier, he would need to clean out this weight class.
Yeah.
Beating Max 3 times is insane.
Okay, but this is my point. Isn't beating Yair him cleaning out this incredible weight class?
Precisely. So in other words, I can't really answer the question until he does this, because if Yair goes in there and decapitates him, which however unlikely you might find that, is still very much on the table at least, well then the conversation changes
just
dramatically.
To correct you, I did preface it when I tossed the question over to you by saying, if potentially he gets past Yair. That was the setup to the question, to basically say, is there more? Because I could make the argument that this fight is more about Yair than it is Alex, because Yair, to everything you guys just said, is finally breaking through. But it also may be simultaneously the final statement at featherweight for Volkanovski in one run in one division that is, I think, now historically on par with anyone.
Yes. Okay. So positing that, I think he would be. Yeah, he'd be very much in the short list, top 5.
I just think that it's always tough too, because you're talking about different eras in a weird way, like different types of competition. But when you look at Volkanovski, the types of guys he's had to beat, and going into Rio, I know he's catching Aldo kind of at the tail end, but he goes into Rio to do that, beats Holloway 3 times. And Holloway, I mean, those age really well, because Holloway has looked good outside of those fights, you know what I mean?
Also, I think Aldo's run at bantamweight has to make the Volkanovski win not feel like it has an asterisk next to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I agree.
So, I mean, it's just, it's impressive. I agree with you guys, though. I think this probably will have a feeling of that kind of finality for me. So I guess in the weird, stakes of historical stakes, or whatever you want to call this, it kind of carries that. Because if he loses, that changes everything. You know what I mean? That changes everything.
Here's what I love about this fight in a nutshell. Not only is it the last remaining killer that Volkanovski hasn't yet faced or beaten at featherweight, but it's the last remaining name at this weight class that I think we could talk ourselves into potential. Like, we're all going to favor Volkanovski. I think he's the best fighter in the world. We're all going to, the odds are going to be close, but you're all going to probably lean Volkanovski, right? Yeah. But this is the last remaining guy who you're like, outside of a fluke, outside of it going perfect for them, that he might be able to come in here and cleanly take the title from Volkanovski, like convincingly come in here and do it. Yair's he's the last Mohican in that regard, correct?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we're recording this at a time where we don't actually know the results of the Ilia Topuria-Josh Emmett fight.
There's always another hammer knocking at the door.
There is always another. And that's one of the interesting part of this. It's like, I got to be honest. I mean, if he loses again, if Volkanovski loses again, the conversation is extremely different. But if he wins, there's a really big question. It's like, not what he wants, but what would you want for Volkanovski in that case? Would you want him with his time remaining at 35-ish years of age to be fighting 155, or would you like him to stay at 145 and fight the Topurias and everybody else?
If it was Topuria, I would love to see that fight. I mean, that's just... It's tantalizing, man.
This conversation may be weird because maybe Topuria gets stretched in 30 seconds.
That is true.
Assuming he wins post this conversation,
right.
Yeah, I would love to see Volkanovski fight a guy like that. Yeah, I really
only
would.
If it's guys like that. It would have to be those guys that are, coming.
Actually, you know what am I saying? I'm actually talking. No, yes, I would love to see him fight Topuria, but BC.
Yeah, you can.
What would you rather see? Volk versus Topuria again in a world where Topuria wins, or Volk versus Charles Oliveira. How are we not like...
No, Volk versus the lightweight division is the answer.
Yeah.
Not just because lightweight's great and there's so many instantly awesome matchups you can make, but I believe there at some point becomes diminishing returns when you hang around dominating a division too long. You know, when you're starting to beat the second tier for the second time again, you know, and you're getting rematches just, well, that's the only guy that was close enough to you. I'm not saying he's necessarily there yet, and yes, there could be names on the come up like a Topuria that, well, if he hung around, man, I wouldn't hate that.
Fun.
Of course, nobody would. But at some point, what else does he have to gain? He beat every legend he could. He's even trying to get Conor in the ring just so that there's not one featherweight champion left that he hasn't fought yet and beat. And I think that, you know, obviously there's some elements of I want to get rich and famous in the process in doing that, but that's also, I like that. That's him saying, I will round it out. I do think there has to be a point where he says, I've done it. Yeah. And I think after beating Max the third time, he could have said that. You know what I mean? He could have done that. Yeah. Okay, Yair's the last remaining guy, do that. But he has to move up next. I think his words have echoed that. And I think even more than that, the performance against Makhachev and the fact that he was not swallowed up by the wrestling, beyond the fact that you can argue that he won, beyond that fact, the fact that he went in there to the man's strength, the wrestling that was dominating everybody and swam with him there, right? And that shows you more than anything, because it does feel like Islam's up here and all the other great lightweights are like right here-ish, right? They're still kind of looking up at the talent disparity and the run he's on. I could have sworn
you had him side by side just now.
There's levels to the leveling of the levels that I'm doing here. But dude, yes, it's time. And I think you have to definitely know when to move, when to make that move. And I think this is if anything, it might be even a little bit.
The truth too is, I think he adds a dimension to the lightweight division, which would make it fun again. Like, and not that it's not fun, but like
I'm about to say again.
Not that it's not fun, but like a lot of the guys that are at the top in that top 6 or 7 have either faded or they've just kind of faced each other. You throw another guy in there, it just kind of throws a new coat of paint on it, right? Like where all of a sudden it's like you got fresh matchups all over the place. So I would like to see it on that level. Is, you know, you think about the Gaethjes and all these guys who are just hovering in that space. You could plug in any of those, and Volkanovski, I mean, it's a fascinating fight, you know?
So let's posit a scenario where we're not talking about any of this. I want to talk about it from Yair's side in a moment, but first on the Volkanovski side. Right, so let's say he loses. Now what? Now what, Chuck? Now where are we? Reshape the landscape for me. You're talking about probably almost certainly an immediate rematch, right?
Well, I don't want to say almost certainly. The Max Holloway factor you can't be overlooked.
Dude, it's the #1 pound-for-pound guy in the sport.
I get that, but Max, true or false, in the opportunities he's had separate from Volkanovski in the past few years has looked to be super elite.
But he already fought Yair.
Right, but it was a great fight, and it was close. And if Yair's the champion, I just feel like if you're UFC, the only way you're ever going to make Volkanovski-Holloway work again is if Holloway wins the championship and they're running that back with Holloway as the champion. So you give that. Who
the hell would Volkanovski fight waiting for them?
He'd have to wait for them, or he'd have to take a one-off at lightweight or whatever. Under that scenario, I don't think he stays, is what I'm saying. If he loses to Yair,
you think he goes to 55 no matter what?
I do. I think it'd be more likely that he would stay if he loses, not just because he might competitively want to run it back against Yair, and there's the opportunity of going to Mexico and doing that and making it even bigger. But I also don't think you can count out, just like the UFC could have done with Whittaker. They could have shoved Robert Whittaker in between the two Adesanya versus Poatan fights, but they didn't. I think Holloway's at a different level than Whittaker in terms of the hierarchy of the star value and how the UFC perceives him. I do think it's possible that if Yair wins, and it's not like disputed enough where you're like, I need to see it back right away, that he would get that chance. Because wouldn't that be, again, the only way you can make Volkanovski versus Holloway 4 happen if the company wanted to? I don't think you lose, is what I'm saying. Giving Max a chance to fight for it next, I don't think there's any way you lose with all those matches.
I just don't think they would. I don't know. I mean, I see what you're saying for like long-term play, but I just feel like if he got upset, they would want to run that one back pretty quickly.
That's what I think happened.
Also, because it gets back to these existential questions you had raised. You were positing before, well, what if he wins? Okay, well now, what if he loses? What does that mean for him all time at featherweight? That would be kind of bad. That would change. Yeah. That would change the conversation. And certainly for the GOAT. Now, if he rematched against Yair and then got it back, he's still in contention for a lot of these things, but it dramatically shifts the conversation on that level. Still, let's talk about Yair Rodriguez.
Takes the shine off, too, if he goes in lightweight on a loss.
Right, on a loss, exactly. Yeah. Unless the judges screw him, which is a little bit different, but you get the idea. Okay.
Well, he used to play rugby at I think 215. I don't know if you've heard this.
Yeah.
Kilos. Okay. Not even pounds anymore.
Or Silla Gorillas.
Gentlemen, before I slap you both, let's talk about Yair Rodriguez here. Are you as amazed by his turnaround as I am?
Well, how amazed are you? I'm not sure.
Scale of 10, I'd say an 8.
Yeah.
Solid.
I am fairly, to be honest, and I mean, I can point out a couple of times where I kind of wrote him off as a guy you wouldn't really consider as a title contender at all, you know? So in that sense, yes. And it's crazy because it feels like he has been around forever. He's a little bit like Max Holloway in the sense like it feels like he's been around forever. He's only 30 years old, you know? He doesn't have nearly the wear and tear as some of the guys. He hasn't had, you know, a million fights like some of the guys. So I feel like he's got a lot to go. But to put it together as he has and become that guy, like now wearing the interim champ. But I'm like, to get to this point is, yeah, it's surprising to me. We see this occasionally where guys, they've been right under your nose forever, and suddenly they become that guy. And he's the latest, but I mean, I never saw it coming.
BC, give me your best theory as to how Yair got so good at this point.
Well, I think there's some surface level comparisons to what happened to Charles Oliveira. It's different, though. There wasn't a second weight class involved, but they both had certain levels of maturity. Look, if you stay, there's so many. You can be a name long before you really figure this game out, right? We've seen that before. Some don't ever quite figure it out. Some do, but it's sometimes when they're like 34 and they get a short season of, are they a quasi-title contender? He's finding it out at the right time. I think it's a combination of maturity. It's a combination of getting to a point where you say, no, not only do I need to give 100% to be at my very best, I can't coast anymore in certain categories, but what would it look like if I went all in on every category? I think that's what happened to Charles Oliveira, and suddenly it was just the mixture of confidence with the right weight class, everything at the right time, learning better things about nutrition and discipline and all that. I think some of that is true with Yair Rodriguez. And I think also he's leaning on his strengths fighting. He's dangerous as shit, not different from Oliveira. He does put himself in dangerous spots, but I think he's also figured out how to just be as efficient and dangerous as possible. I mean, he doesn't come in with wild, ridiculous strikes that leave him open. It's very calculated, but once I think everything came together, that technique gets ramped up when you add the confidence, when you add the better defensive realistic. You just add the full package, dude. It's happening. It's his time. Everyone shows flashes. It's those that can finally take the losses, take the setbacks, and put it together. He's put it together. Now, is there a secret underneath that as to why? Was there a turning point in his growth as a man? I'm not really sure, Luke. I don't look back and say it was that one loss that changed him, right? And for the better. He just may have woken up at the right time to say, I can't coast anymore. I mean, guys like him, and I don't know this enough to throw that theory out there, but I'm saying at some point people find early success, they kind of start coasting until they go to realize, oh wait, to get to that next level, it takes an additional level of discipline.
He's always been a little nomadic. You remember earlier in his career, he kind of bounced around camps. He would travel around. And some people, I think, I don't know if this was just immaturity, but I think a lot of people thought he kind of had an attitude problem. You know, like you talk to people who had been around him and he didn't fit. And for whatever reason, there's just no chemistry. I feel like that has changed. Like he was fighting out in Mexico City. I think it was the Jeremy Stevens fight, and he was training like up at 12,000 feet or something. Like he was, and I remember talking to him at that point, and you could tell that he was just dedicated in a new way. And it's hard to actually pinpoint that very thing, but it seemed like he was just very, very serious about his craft now. And I think that he just wasn't like that before. If you talk to him back in his earlier days, he was a very young guy, and I just don't think he had the focus yet, you know. And I think I don't know when it happened, but it has happened. I feel like when you talk to him now, it's just he's turned into that guy, like he's figured it out.
My best theory is that there's more pressure put on a young fighter when they are, in his case, it was like we're waiting for our first Mexican-born superstar. We're waiting for the one person that can lead this movement of this boxing culture, rabid boxing culture in Mexico. How do we bring MMA in there? I wonder if that led to so much pressure that you almost start to push that away. You underachieve for a certain season. And once you felt you've outlived that pressure, then you're like, okay, I got through that season now. Let me now on my own terms, let me go out there and figure it out. It just so happens that the timing wise, he fits right in the midst of this march of Mexican MMA and the takeover. Takeover slowed by Irene Aldana's performance. True or false? Seriously,
sadly true.
The momentum of Mexican MMA was slowed by that. True.
Yeah, that whole performance was forgettable. I think you were right though about like what the theory is. To to me, he had an offensive system that everyone praised because it was unique, and it was, and it still is.
Yeah.
But it was wild and untamed and unrefined and full of problems. And takedown defense wasn't there, even when there was. The guard work wasn't really there. On his feet, to your point, BC, leaving it constantly for these high risk jumping switch, whatever the fuck, and some of them would land, some of them wouldn't, right? But like it was inconsistent. You go back to that Josh Emmett fight, dude. He was target practice.
I know.
I mean, everything landed every time nearly. And of course, he got hit a little bit as well, and he took it. But nevertheless, I think he just understands his own offensive system so much better. And what his assignments are in this position to get to the next one. What are we doing? What's the goal here?
He has everything. Like a calculated hitman rather than a video game.
Yes, you know yes. Everything just seems like he has a clear sense of what to do, purpose, and he just executes now much, much more efficiently, which is why I do think this is like a real threat to Volkanovski. Like it's a fun story to see him come this far, but then there's a question of how much you consider him a threat. I would consider him a serious threat, a really serious threat. Do you?
The last serious threat.
Yeah, I do. And I think we've seen this so many times too. A guy finally gets his position and there's a guy who looks unbeatable and they get toppled on that sort of thing. The setup is there, but yeah, man,
Volkanovski has been dropped against Mendez. He got dropped against Holloway. I don't think he got dropped against Aldo. He's been dropped. He got dropped by Ortega.
Ortega.
That scenario could 100% happen. I mean, because you talking about how he's more measured and just kind of like tamed himself down a little bit.
Ruthless, but yes.
But I think that you think about that and how disciplined Volkanovski is, and I was just sitting there thinking about that. That's going to be a very fascinating in the stand-up exchanges and just what they're doing back and forth is going to be fascinating. But dude, I mean, I could see it 100%. Yair catching him and putting him on skates and that's it. You know, that's a scenario in play, man. I don't know what the odds are, but I know that he's. It's a dangerous proposition.
Well, the thing that I love about Volkanovski that has been, I think, the wild card in me, because early on there were people that seemed to be ahead of it. You seem to be ahead of watch this guy Volkanovski, like it's next level, right? And I wanted to slow that to some degree. It was the way he navigates danger, though, the way his body and mind react. Ortega putting him in deep in that choke, reacts to like. Clear and present danger that came out of nowhere and would overwhelm most people. His ability to swim through that makes this matchup, I think, even better because Yair can put him there. I mean, look what Yair, in a losing effort, did to Max in those first 2 rounds, especially that first round, dude. He put it on Max. I thought it took Max just biting down to get through that. Nobody's as dangerous as Yair in this division, but nobody is really as great as operating with poise under pressure, quite like Volkanovski. I mean, look, it's maybe not his greatest aspect, but it's as elite as his game planning, footwork, as striking technique, all that stuff is. Dude, that's a real dude under there. That's an absolute real dude.
Film on this one already?
Not yet, but I mean, obviously, I've looked into a lot of Volkanovski's fights. Yair's I've been a little bit behind on, but I was just watching the Emmett fight again, and I was like. Dude, he is like the decision making is so much faster, so much clearer, less risky, but still brutal. Like that was a brutal thing. He did to Josh Emmett. So it's like there's a couple times he got hit, and you wonder about those against a guy like Volkanovski and what he could do more regularly. But that version of him against Josh Emmett is just Jason Voorhees. I mean, marching him down almost, really kind of frightening in a way.
Chuck, why don't we call him Y-Rod at all?
I don't know.
What?
Remember after A-Rod, anyone with the last name Rodriguez became, I know Chris Rodriguez, C-Rod, my man, from Bridgeport. But
that doesn't roll off the tongue.
Y-Rod never happened. Do you think there's something to that?
You can call him Yair Rod, but that's really starting to get a little specific, isn't it?
It's getting weird, too. Getting a little bit weird.
You mentioned that. You mentioned that Aldana losing slowed the Mexican thing. It's 3 gringos who have our finger on the pulse of what Latinos in this country think.
100%.
Or in Mexico. Do we have any sense of... I mean, I feel like Mexican MMA has kind of already arrived. They've got Grasso as a champ. Moreno's on his card. We'll talk about him in a second. He's a champ. Obviously, this is an interim title, but does it really...
if he becomes the full champion against the #1 guy in the world, this reactivates...
Oh, yes, you know what? You're right. To your point.
10,
yes, to your point. He'd be beating the #1 guy in the world. That would be a new level of excellence for Mexican MMA, I do feel like,
100%. It could be a very big...
Tell me about Mexican MMA, Chuck. We as noteworthy experts that we are.
I have been to Mexico City. It's nice down there.
Yeah, I've never been. I heard good things.
You never heard a thing called sea level Chuck before? Neither have I, right?
Yeah. No, sea level Kane.
I do think that this would be the moment, though.
Chuck
I
would
really
shoot
believe
first
this.
too, though, just so you know. I mean,
and if they both win, if Moreno's able to win, I mean, it sets up a pretty big momentum for the country if they want to have an event down there.
Did you go to one? You went to Mexico City.
I went down for the Yair's fight with Steven Switch ended. Remember,
were they throwing the shit in the ring?
Yeah. It was wild.
was that Kane Verdum night?
No.
Which was the main event that night?
That was the main event.
Was that the one where Yair post fight screamed at Michael Bisping?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
That was a weird one.
It was a very strange atmosphere. It was fun. It was cool to be in the city. But I tell you what, man, just being down there and seeing the pop that he got, I can imagine if he wins this title and he goes down there, it's going to be big. You know, he has a lot of fans down there. So, and Moreno too. I mean, I get the sense I haven't seen him. Actually, was he on that card? I don't forget now. But anyway, I know that he's a huge star even in the States. So he goes down there, man. I do feel like that would be the moment where Mexican MMA is here. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe the Grasso moment was the setup for this moment in terms of their arc.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that because it takes us to the co-main event, which is Brandon Moreno taking on Alexandre Pantoja. And what's kind of funny about that is some of the things you want to say about Yair, Moreno's already done. So, for example, right, Yair was cut from the organization. If he comes back and he beats Volkanovski, wow, it's like going from cut to becoming the champion. But it's like Moreno already did that shit, and he's on the second lap of it here a little bit. What role does he play? I mean, yes, he's the co-main event on this card, Chuck, but in this giant sort of Mexican MMA / international fight week, I feel like no one's really everyone's very respectful of the co-main, but I don't hear anyone jazzed for it, even though it's a very good.
It's going to be a great fight.
Reiterated fight. It's the third meeting between these.
You'd think that the backstory would matter here. You know, just the fact that Pantoja has a victory over Moreno.
Two of them, the Ultimate Fighter and in 2018.
And I mean, but you think that this would be a larger story, but for some reason it hasn't been, and it's kind of strange, man. In the same way we're talking about Volkanovski being an unsung guy for his role, I feel like Moreno's sort of there too. I personally didn't think he would get by Figueiredo in that series. I didn't know they would fight that many times, but I thought Figueiredo would be kind of stationed there for a while, and he looked better and better through that series. So I think that this is one of those fights where I think that he becomes out more the people who haven't been paying attention, I think will see him more in this light, and he'll get some of that shine. But it's in terms of what were you asking, in the Mexican MMA, if he's going to, in the grand scheme?
Well, also, it's just a weird situation because you're talking about this fight. I think I agree with everything you're saying. It's just weird. There's plenty of enthusiasm for Brandon Moreno. There's just none on the Pantoja side. That's the issue, right?
Yeah, it is really weird.
Even though they have all of this.
I want to ask a key question about the momentum of Brandon Moreno's star and what that means to Mexican MMA. Obviously, he's beloved and respected, and he perseveres through getting cut, perseveres through losing the title, but has the fact that he's had 4 episodes against Figueiredo, flip-flopping a bit, winning it back, and now a third fight against Pantoja. Does that...
He's the Rose Namajunas of...
Right, but I'm saying, it shows his resiliency, but does it hold back his star potential because it's not a sustained reign? It's not what DJ established, and then Cejudo took over, but then left early. It's sort of this... there's a lot of parity. The post-Cejudo DJ run in this division, which I guess they say Mick Maynard is the matchmaking key for really keeping this division alive and aggressively matching these guys. They've all fought each other 2-3 times. They've beaten each other. I mean, it's great, but I do wonder if that's slowed him from the full ascendation of the star.
I think so. Because,
Ascendancy?
Ascendation is more of an East Coast,
Yeah, I think that when sometimes you get an impression in MMA, especially, I guess all combat sports, where you kind of peg a guy you're all right, he's who he is, and then when they rise above that, you still kind of see him the first way. This happens all the time. I feel like his first impressions were not really that impressive, So I think that some of that is still there, but it was eye-opening for me to watch him in that whole series, and not just that. I feel like he's an interesting guy in the terms of Legos and all the things he's into, and he's just his own guy. So I thought he handles himself pretty well in terms of with the microphone and all that stuff. So he has some charisma and all that.
Oh, he's a broadcaster on the Spanish side for the UFC and very popular.
It's just I don't know. But I feel like you're right. There's not a buzz around his name when he fights though, and it's
and of course even if he were to persevere here and do really well, like no one is going to be in that converse. There's like not a larger narrative about the fight. That's the problem, right? In the main event, hey, is Volkanovski going to 155? Right. It's the best fighter on earth. What does it mean for his legacy? Here, it's like even if Moreno wins, we're not going to be talking about him in the same respect with DJ. You have such a long way to go to match DJ or anything even close to it. So it's like really good. It's really commendable. But you're talking about a level of excellence that's just impossible for him to match up to.
But on the slide, Chuck, is Pantoja more dangerous to the title that Moreno holds, or is Yair more dangerous to the title?
I think Yair. I mean, he just looks so good, man.
Pantoja's a finisher, though.
That is true.
He's nicknamed the Cannibal.
Here's the problem with the Pantoja. He's on the 3-fight win streak. His last loss was to Askarov, which was slightly disputed, but not really. I went back and I watched that. I thought Askarov won. And he's had the problem with his record is it's impressive, but not overly so. Like
he beat Manel Kape. I mean, this whole division just resets. You go to the top, you lose, you come back down.
But his losses, while not disqualifying, have certainly made you think, well, he's just a step short of the elite, right? He's very, very good.
See, I think he's dark horse potential.
You've never been dissuaded by any of his losses?
Maybe it's because of the disparity of this division. Have I been dissuaded by the Moreno losses? No, he finds a way to persevere and come back and show a deeper level of his game.
Only 33 for Pantoja, by the way.
Yeah, and if he's already beaten Moreno twice and has that confidence level.
Okay, so let's talk about those wins. So the first one was the Ultimate Fighter. He subs him in the second round. It was, Moreno didn't look like he had any idea what the fuck he was doing. I mean, he shouldn't even been in the UFC at that point, candidly. And the second one takes place. Moreno was 24 years old. This was in 2018. And Pantoja beat the shit out of him. I mean, there was a couple times I thought he was going to stop him, and he wins, and that's over. So he goes from not getting finished, to getting finished to not getting finished to here where we are today. Here's the thing, though. It's been 5 years since that fight. And just be honest. Who has gotten better in the last 5 years from that point? Pantoja or Moreno? Okay. It's Moreno with a bullet.
Yes. While that's true, yes. But Pantoja on a 3-fight win streak against good names, and he's beaten the champion twice. And I don't know. I feel like he has more of a chance even than Yair does against Volkanovski.
He's one of the best back attackers. He's got really impressive back attacks. I think it was the end of the first or second round of the second fight. He just jumps on Moreno's back standing and still manages to clamp a leg over the arm. Like, very impressive back taker. And an okay striker, but not like, I feel like Moreno didn't just get better with the Figueiredo series. I feel like he grew up. I feel like he had like almost a little bit what you got from Volkanovski against Holloway, where it was like one of these guys is going to have to turn the corner here and put into overdrive. And I feel like Moreno did that.
Okay, let's debate this. Man. I don't feel like Moreno has turned that corner. I feel like this division has so much parity, and I love what Moreno's done. I love the adjustments he's made within the series against Figueiredo to end up with the title. Love all of that. I just think they're all at roughly the same level. I felt the same thing about Askarov, who lost and then is now out of the organization. I think Kaikar France is like that close. Right, from being in,
that is true.
They're all kind of right there. I don't feel like Moreno has made enough of a statement of separation that this is now his time and he's building a reign. I think this is still hot potato, and all of these guys, Brandon Royval, all of these guys at the top can. Royval got submitted by Pantoja because that's what happens in this division. It's very incestuous.
Royval also takes a lot of risks.
Because he's the raw dog.
Because he's just raw dogging these
people. Where I come from, they do a lot of raw dogging. They live their life by the risk. Okay. Live and die by the sword, and I'm not talking about the
old rhythm method. We're talking about different kinds of pump and dump schemes, not crypto. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think Moreno, having faced him, obviously, like he got better in the Figueiredo series, figured him out through the process, but like, can he do that with this? I mean, isn't that the question? Like, how does he?
He's already shown that, like, against top rivals, he has the ability to
so weird because
lap them. It's just those ones all happened in close succession. Yeah. This one's happening in slow motion.
Who's he lapping though? He's getting.
So here's the thing. I mean, I agree in the sense that Moreno doesn't have like a DJ level hold on the division. Of course not. But I sort of grant what BC is saying, which is that like on any given night, could anyone in that top 5 win? Yeah, they probably could, right? They probably could. Nevertheless, I do feel like Moreno is better than them.
Okay, but if you made a pound-for-pound list of reigning champions in the UFC, men's side, I guess would be a safer, more fair debate. He's what, worst or second worst, right? In terms of their pound-for-pound level ability.
Yes, that is correct, I think.
Who would have in the worst on the men's side? Jamal Hill?
He would argue Jamal Hill only because of lack of, like, he got the opportunity. He took advantage of the opportunity.
No, in fairness to Jamal Hill, we're just saying he hasn't even defended it yet, right? Fuck.
I mean, I still vote pound for pound and handle CBS's, so I find myself having Moreno either at like somewhere between 10 and 12 at all
Pretty
times,
fair.
usually dictated by other people coming in and out, whether he gets back in. You know?
It's also a sense of the division as well. Like, how would you rank the divisions irrespective of the champion? You probably would put it. The flyweight has made an incredible rebound since it's near bloodletting days. Remember that?
Yes.
When the Black Plague came through and just wiped out half of the division?
Yeah, but dude, like anyone can win any night, and that is exciting though. So while this is not,
So do you favor Moreno to win?
Yes, but I think all the title fights right now among these guys are 50-50. I mean, that series with Figueiredo kind of proved that to some degree, although the first fight a draw, but
The flyweight division would be kind of.
I mean, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't say that to criticize the division. I love what Mick Maynard has done. I love the fact that these fights are just killer, high-paced, incredible fights. I just don't think Brandon Moreno has done enough to separate himself yet. This would be a great victory, especially a guy who beat him twice already. This would be a great victory to go in that direction. But I think I don't know what the odds are again, but I think this is a flip a coin to find out what happens, especially against a guy who has the history, the mental advantage of he finished him.
Sure. I mean, we could also be doing the whole barista Daniel Cormier,
Patrick Cummins
bit, where it's like this guy made him cry in practice, and then DC fucked him up.
I miss those days.
But also, here's another part too. Here's another story that we're kind of missing here. It doesn't really matter in the main event, but it does in the co-main, which is what about a Brazilian champion? Now with Amanda Nunes since retiring, by the way, on the thing on Twitter, the fighter roster, she got removed. She's off of it now. So there isn't a Brazilian champion.
Wow.
Right? So
is it really not in any form in the UFC? There's not.
Go through the weight classes.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
you have Moreno at 125. You have at 135. You have who's a 135 punch? My brain's not working. Aljamain. 145 is Volk. 155 is Makhachev. 170.
You're right. Glover lost the belt.
Leon, sorry, what am I doing? And then 185 is Izzy back again because it was Pineda. It was Pineda.
The champion had a name, and it was Charles Oliveira.
Right, but now it's like 205. It's Jamal Hill. Heavyweight, it's John Jones, and then in the women's side, it's Grasso, and then blah blah blah.
As Mexican MMA seems on the verge of having its most incredible stretch of all time, Pantoja is the least amount of fanfare at the moment of a truly elite title contending. Maybe outside of Tyler Santos, who you could argue should have won the title that night. But yeah, this would be an interesting opportunity to start a new run.
Where does that division go if it's Pantoja, man? It's just
more rematches.
I know more rematches.
Into a fourth Moreno fight, probably, or
more rematches.
It would be kind of a mess, honestly, man.
I mean, it might be Royval. He's put together a nice streak. He might actually get it next.
That's true.
But also, just for Brazil's sake, to get a champion back, I think would be. I mean, the Brazil produces so much talent. Yeah. You never really worry about them being out of it. But it is strange that on the men's and women's side, as we speak today, not a champion from Brazil.
The last time that happened was.
I feel like it's been a while, dude.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been a while.
I feel like there's always a Brazilian champion.
I mean, Silva reigned for so long. And, I mean, God.
The Baron,
Huh?
The Baron?
The Baron, bro. Then USADA fucked all that shit
dude,
up.
USADA ruined his career, Barao, right? That's what Faber told me.
Never got that jacket. That was the issue. That's changed everything for people who've gotten it.
Oh.
Any other thoughts on this co-main as terms of, like, things that matter about it to you?
I don't think anything else matters about it.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's a little light on that regard, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying. This is a fight that will entertain. It will sort of take us, further down the road on who's the real best fighter in this division, yet is not going to get anybody to buy the card or show up for the most part for it being there.
I will say this, before we move on from it, the two Mexican fighters in the main and co-main, I was talking to some folks who are Mexican combat sports journalists, and they were telling me, and we know this anyway on the boxing side, I just feel like I haven't seen it as much on the MMA side, BC. So, for example, in January, BC, where I were in Las Vegas for the Caleb Plant, David Benavidez fight. Dude, the Mexican fans for David Benavidez, like, of course they come out for Canelo. I thought it was going to be like a lot less. Dude, like they were there for him.
That was
big
March.
time, huh?
That was March.
March. What am I saying? January. Sorry, it was 3 months ago. But the point I'm trying to make is I couldn't believe how ready they were. Right?
You're right though about the box. I haven't seen it yet in MMA.
So this is what I'm saying. Like, and they were saying like the Mexican fans apparently don't in any way mind traveling to Las Vegas. They like it. So I do think it's good. I mean, again, we've been talking about like International Fight Week. Does it have a Conor? No, it doesn't. Right. But I think it is smart of them to go to places like this, cultivate these fan bases, work on that.
The talk of the Grasso-Shevchenko rematch in September, maybe being on free TV.
Exactly what I'm talking
Las
about.
Vegas during Mexican Independence Day weekend. No, the co-main we put to bed. Now it's time to find out,
Who's the real African champion?
Exactly. Is this just the setup? Is this is Whittaker versus Du Plessis the Christmas Eve to Christmas morning, which is an all African?
I don't know
showdown?
if this fight. I don't know what this fight is going to be. So you indicated it. 185-pound fight. Title shot has to be right. Has to be for that one.
Uncle Dana said yes.
And frankly, we'll talk about what happens in either direction. I actually think you get something kind of interesting for very different reasons. So here comes Dricus Du Plessis, who apparently couldn't breathe through his nose. I didn't know, and had to get surgery, and now he can breathe again. That's great.
A man after your own nasal pipes, right?
Hey, listen, our producer Mikey's dog snores like a motherfucker on those Zoom calls. Can you imagine Dricus snoring? He must sound like a goddamn walrus fucking a chainsaw. It must be unbelievable. All right.
That'd be some serious coitus right there.
Yes. So here's my point. He is, I mean, what do you want to say about Dricus, Chuck? He's a goofball, right? You have in Robert Whittaker, the gentleman of the game, who is like renowned for his precise technique and high fight IQ. And here comes Dricus, like the Dukes of Hazzard, right? Shooting through with the General Lee, waiting on Boss Hogg to catch him. And yet he's like the Dukes of Hazzard. He keeps winning.
I know.
Talk to me about Dricus Du Plessis. What is his, how did he get here?
Plodding forward and throwing bombs, man. That's
yeah, but I want to actually talk about how he got here, because Chuck, how he got here.
Okay.
That Darren Till fight was weird.
Was submitting Darren Till and stopping an older Derek Brunson.
Okay, but the Brunson fight also weird.
So my point is, Chuck, I don't want you to just answer his question. I want you to answer mine.
All right.
Is Dricus Du Plessis worthy of a #1 contender fight right now when he beat Darren Till and Derek Brunson?
Well, only because Izzy has cleaned out so much of the other side. You know, it's just the new blood. But honestly, man, he doesn't play a lot of defense. It just seems like this is where like the hype would go to die, right? Like you go against a guy like Whittaker who's only lost to one guy in the last 9 years. You know what I mean? It's like this is the matchup, and in that way, it kind of I love the fight. I love the idea of it, but the fact that you're going to kill off possibly one of the guys who could be the fresh blood in that division kind of sucks, doesn't it? I'm like, I would rather that especially because they have such a feud. I'm talking about Izzy with, Du Plessis. Like, to me, that would be some dark matter. Like,
but the feud sucks, to be fair, though. What is the feud? The feud is
You say that as somebody who is jealous they can't be the first African champion.
Yeah, I mean, I always make the comparison to the Larry Holmes, Jerry Cooney
oh my God.
heavyweight title fight that we look back was a
very relevant comparison that all Gen Zers will know.
When you look back to that early 80s showdown, it was all about race to a gross level of Cooney being the great white hype against, and all that. And that was like what everybody leaned into to sell it. And now we look back on that and we cringe as shit. Yeah. Is Du Plessis only in this spot because he made the African champion comment and that pissed off? Well,
here's the thing. South African MMA has been on the map for a little while. They've had a few guys come out of there. Don Madge is another one. He's had some ups and downs. But, Trevor Prangley came from South Africa many, many years ago.
JP Bays, can we put a little bit of
Fair
respect?
enough. They've always had a little bit of a contingency down there. And I think that that's a market the UFC has not really looked at as like, hey, we could blow it up. But I definitely think they want to do more with it. They want to cultivate on the African continent. South Africa appears to be ready to go in that way.
Yeah. Hear this out. This is supposed to be Sean Strickland. They wanted him to be the next fighter to fight Izzy. It didn't work out. He suffered losses at wrong times. They're trying to just find the next name they can fast track.
That's
but
all it is.
But what name is it supposed to be if it's not one of these two?
Okay, I'm ready for you. Ready for this?
Yes.
Hamzat Chimaev. He should either be fighting Izzy.
He has no top 10 wins, top 15 wins at 185.
Here's my opinion. Even with him missing weight against Nate, and there's a lot of weirdness with that. Okay, conspiratorial or not, there's just a lot of unexplained weirdness as to why he missed weight.
The Rothschilds were there.
You're either going to penalize him for that or you're not. UFC doesn't seem to penalize people that they like and that they want to do big things behind, even after threatening that Amanda Nunes would never headline again after she, didn't fight Valentina the second time. So my point is, okay, they want him to stay at middleweight. So why is he not fighting either Adesanya on July 8th for the title or Whittaker for the chance to fight for the title? Why is it Du Plessis who doesn't even earn it? Is it so that
I'm not a Du Plessis truther, but I mean, he's earned it way more than Hamzat Chimaev.
But Chimaev has a next level aura and hype around him.
Okay, so just so I understand
that he earned through, in my opinion, that Chimaev earned through the pandemic by being willing and able and fighting 3 times in succession and winning a fight at welterweight, then middleweight, and just dominating. And then what he did to Li Jiangliang and just dropping him in front of Dana.
Yeah.
He did the things you need to do to show that I'm that next dude. So either
these are vibes. You're literally arguing he has an aura. We should give him a title shot based on.
He doesn't have an aura. He drives. Do you remember the head of that Gilbert fight when we interviewed Gilbert Diaz and it did stupid numbers because of the Chimaev factor?
Yes.
I'm not saying Chimaev's reputation and aura and hype isn't damaged by missing the weight, but he did go out there against Kevin Holland and beat him in like 6 seconds. My whole point is you're either going to hold it against him or not. If you're not, why is he not being inserted directly into this?
I wouldn't mind the argument that he would be on the card fighting someone else interesting, and then you have a couple choices.
Yeah.
But just. I mean,
that fight, though, if they make that fight at some point.
But it's hold on. It sounds like you hate this fight. Like, I mean,
I hate this fight.
Do you only hate this fight because Chimaev is waiting in the wings? Also, there could be some visa issues. Who knows about that?
I'll give you everything I hate about this fight.
Tell me
right now. I hate this fight because if Du Plessis wins, okay, man, if he beats Whittaker straight up, dude, will he have earned it? Yes. but I feel like you're only fast tracking him because you want this African theme and maybe you want to put the fight in Africa in some form. And again, I think it's weird with all that race side of it. The other thing is you're then, in my opinion, based on how I perceive this fight from an odds standpoint, just serving him up to Whittaker to what? Set up the third Whittaker Adesanya fight. Now, look, nobody loves Whittaker more than me, and I thought he actually beat Adesanya in the rematch, so I'm not going to hate that. But if you're the UFC, that's not a matchup that's fresh. Would they love it in the Oceanic world? I'm sure. But isn't Chimaev that next big thing that's coming? So why are you not, to your point,
might be a visa thing.
Have him on this card or whatever to just build toward that being next?
That I agree with. Not putting him on this card for whatever reason is really holding it back, holding potentially a middleweight title shot back in a more interesting direction. My only thing is I wouldn't even mind if they fast-track Chimaev to the top 10 for a matchup.
Yeah.
I need to see him beat someone between 5 and 7 before I can be like, title shot. I mean, I just feel
like when Izzy came back and knocked out Poatan and did that, isn't it time to go to 205?
Probably.
He's like what we're talking about Volkanovski. If he gets by Yair, what else do you have to accomplish? I know you could beat a Topuria who might be next. There's always going to be somebody that's next. If you're Adesanya, and then Poatan already moved up to 205. I don't know why, unless Adesanya looks at the landscape and goes, well, I would like Whittaker again. That'd be big money in Australia. Maybe it would be. But why doesn't he just move up and then suddenly we have the build of Whittaker maybe versus
so you don't like
for the title?
I want to follow on. Normally, I don't want to hear a thing BC has to say, but today I'm actually feeling
it's good.
I'm feeling a little frisky. So you think the African thing that Dricus has brought up, it's been him bringing it up. Like the UFC, to my knowledge, yet, because we know, like, they took the Dolly thing and they just turned it into a sales angle. So it's not like it's all beyond them to do that.
Eye socket. We can't help you at the moment.
Yeah, so it's not like it's beyond them to do this kind of thing, but they haven't done it yet, to my knowledge. So what is your concern? Your concern is that if Dricus wins, first of all, he would break the hearts of every Robert Whittaker fan across the world.
I mean, it'd be a hell of a win. It would be
because dude, there's no way he's going to win normally.
He's right the 8-ball for a long time if he loses.
Like Jose, Dricus Du Plessis is not going to win normally. He's going to go for a suplex, fail, but then Whittaker goes face first into the canvas and breaks his neck or some shit, But my point is this: if Dricus brings it up, why is that? Yes, I don't like it either, BC, because it's like, what does it mean to be African? It's like, well, there's lots of Moroccans are Africans, and so are the Sudanese, and it's a very diverse kind of thing to be in a way. Are you worried that the UFC is going to run with that angle as well and make it hey, who's the real race winner here?
I'm not waiting up at night worrying about it. I just think that you're fast tracking Dricus for what? For an all African race bowl that is just going to get so weird. I mean, we have to get Matt Damon out and refilm that rugby movie with Volkanovski in the starring role. Maybe I don't know. It's just gross and weird. So I'm I wonder if
it was the white rugby players who killed apartheid. Just remember.
I wonder if the UFC wants Adesanya to go to 205, but he's I'd kind of like to finish it off, maybe Strickland, maybe, and they go, well, how about Du Plessis? We can fast track him in there. I mean, right? Probably because he looks at it as.
I know.
a one-sided win, but yet would be a little bit of hype. I mean, I think Adesanya is a good businessman. He wants some hype ahead of his fights. He knows Du Plessis would be a hype fight. Maybe that's what they're saying. Okay, but we have to give him to Whittaker. It's not likely to happen, but here's your chance. If Whittaker wins, we're going to come back to you and say, do you want to do this trilogy or do you want to go to 205? I just feel like let's solve it now. You go to 205. Let's get Whittaker, who has already deserved it 5 times over, put him in the vacant title shot, but against who is the question? Would you hate Hamzat? Would you hate Hamzat? I wouldn't. I mean, you know.
That would be a hell of a fight, too.
I still wouldn't love that, but I'd be much more accepting. I mean, again, if Hamzat beat Whittaker, how could you deny him, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what is this conversation? How does this conversation change that we're having right now if Bo Nickal, who is making his UFC debut, or is it second fight against Tresean Gore?
Tresean Gore. He already beat Jamie Pickett.
To open this card, what if Bo Nickal does that? I take you down right away and submit you within the first 90 seconds. Are we having stupid fast track conversations instead of about Du Plessis and Chimaev and now about Nickal, or is it still further away?
Dude, how the fuck is Bo Nickal going to beat Tresean Gore in a way that is more impressive to you than in this eventuality? Dricus Du Plessis beating Robert Whittaker. That just sounds insane to say.
On Morning Combat, a couple days before we shot this, what chances are you giving Du Plessis of winning that? And I told you I'm not. 10 out of 10, I'm picking Whittaker. Am I crazy? Put me in my place.
That's the way it should go.
I'd go 9 out of 10. Whittaker.
You're going 10 out of 10. You're
expecting some kind of chaos to take place in there.
Dude, he is the agent. That's what I'm saying, man. He is the agent of it. That is what he does. You watch the tape on him and you can see he's athletic, you can see he's strong, but he fights like a goof. Like, I don't know how else to say it.
Clumsy and plotting and
weird,
crazy.
and like he has to work out of bad positions, and what really saves him, and I mean this obviously aside from being athletic and like a good size for the weight class, he's just headstrong. He's just absolutely not in any way all he's there to do is just commit to whatever the assignment is. And so I think that really carries him pretty far. I don't think that should carry him past a guy as good as Whittaker. But if it does, you're like, well, fuck. I mean.
Well, if we're operating under the pretense that maybe Izzy is hanging around looking for one-off fights, what if Whittaker does beat Du Plessis, but then UFC goes, all right, instead of necessarily putting you back in there for a third time against Adesanya, we put you against Chimaev, and that's why I was opening the door to the Bo Nickal conversation. Win or lose, win in 2 seconds or not, you think Bo Nickal's going to need and deserve two more fights after this if he keeps doing Bo Nickal things, right?
The problem is the name value, not just the name value, but the value in beating Robert Whittaker is so profoundly greater than beating Tresean Gore. It just is. Which doesn't mean that one is easy, or that's not what I'm saying.
To see, though, what happens if Bo Nickal goes through Gore quickly again,
and then grabs the mic,
it will be,
and then says Adesanya.
He is very polished.
Dude, what if he does that? That's all I'm saying. UFC likes to react.
He has right now, I think, 1 round and 15 seconds of total pro experience. So it's like that would be fast tracking to some level that we've never.
But that would be the point of doing it.
Right.
You would do that only for the point of let's make this a thing, right? He says he's ready. Let's make this a thing.
It will be interesting, man. I thought it was him on the card talking about Bo Nickal is an interesting wrinkle to this, because I do feel like, in part, you're saying who's Izzy going to fight? Are we exhausted by the whole Whittaker idea? And who's out there? And those types of names are the ones that come to mind, right? Even though they're a little ways off, those are the exciting fights. You're starting to think of the guys that are coming up into that conversation, and I think that that's what makes it fun.
Do you believe that they reward Izzy in some regard? Remember when he wanted to fight Yoel Romero at a time that Romero really hadn't earned it because he had lost so many in a row, and UFC went, well, the champ wants it. It's a dangerous fight. Let's give it to him.
Yeah. That would be interesting, too.
He's made that claim about Dricus, and now Dricus is fighting Whittaker. What if Bo Nickal finishes him quick, gets on the mic, does the Izzy thing, and then Izzy's on Twitter going, all right, big guy, maybe that's the one that's a great
Izzy, but Izzy wants that Dricus fight so bad.
I know.
I think he would love
Izzy's Whittaker's a horrible fight for Dricus. So is Izzy. Izzy and Whittaker should both be really bad fights for Du Plessis, but they would be big fights, too. I guess there's really no else.
It would be so tough, though, if you're Izzy. You've already beat Whittaker. And I mean, one of them obviously being very close, but when you look at that, to have to beat a guy again, I just think that that's the hardest position to be in. You're trying to protect something that the guy keeps coming for, and you got to keep patting him down. I mean, that's got to be the toughest thing.
That's brutal. Now, I do have to discuss it before we move on, which is, okay, but what if Whittaker loses? No, I don't mean on the Dricus side. I mean on the Whittaker side. That would be devastating for his career, because there's at least an assumption that he'll get another fight for a title, right? There's at least that. But if you take that away, you're like, oh, Oh, well, now where are we?
I know.
Well, he's not dead. It'd be a really bad
No, but
loss
it would be,
in the moment.
dude, that would be the worst loss of his career
I
by a
still
million
think
miles.
it would be dependent upon Adesanya's future, because if Adesanya makes the decision to move up, suddenly UFC's like, well, Whittaker's got to be our leading candidate to be in some type of fight. Obviously not right after if he had lost to Are we going to call him DDP? Are we really going to do everyone's? I mean, all the people that the MMA old guard of journalists who go to every show still, like those guys, they all call him DDP.
They call him DDP.
Yeah, when I think DDP, I think of this, right?
A vagina? I don't know. What are you doing?
Vagine? Let me look through it to talk.
The Illuminati thing? What
No,
is
it's
that?
the Diamond Dallas Page thing that Jay-Z started doing
I
for
remember. Is that the dude with
Illuminati.
the yoga?
It's the Diamond Cutter. Yeah, DDP. Yeah. But are we really going to first reference now? He's the dude from the yoga. He's not.
That's what I know him
He's
from.
not Diamond Dallas Page, former WCW champion.
I know him from the
AWA
yoga.
manager.
Hey, dude, I'll tell you what. His wrestling highlights, to what extent, they don't show up on my timeline. His yoga shit, I see all the time.
Okay.
The yoga shit is relevant, bro. Don't think it's not.
Do you think the UFC actually wants Adesanya Whittaker 3? Or would still put muscle behind and still go for it?
If they put it back in Australia, yeah. It'd be a big fight in Australia.
Okay.
Here, though, I mean, that'd be the weird part. It's like, hey, we've got Izzy versus Whittaker 3. It's going to be in Tachi Palace. You'd be like, what the fuck?
They owe Tachi Palace.
Yeah, well, that's right.
For life.
But I'm saying, like, imagine they put it in, like, Portland. You'd be like, why the fuck are we in Portland?
No,
this
it'd
should
have
be
to
in
be out there.
Canberra.
It would have to be out there. But man, if he loses, I think you're right. It's about as devastating of a loss you can take and not lose the belt.
Right.
Because you're losing the chance to even be in that conversation.
That's like a reputational loss.
Yeah, because he's already behind the 8 ball just trying to get that shot, So
All right, if DDP wins, do we do the Adesanya fight at Sun City? Or what? That's such an early 80s joke. It's like nobody picked it up.
That's a great question. Where do you put?
And no matter who wins that fight, is the real African champion still Francis Ngannou?
oh my God.
No, seriously.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know if 3 guys in their 40s get to decide who the actual African champion is. That seems to be beyond our purview. But where would you put that fight? Golly, dude. I don't know.
The pyramids.
Huh?
The pyramids.
No, you could put it in South Africa. But if it's the champion,
I wanted to go there, but I mean, they've mentioned it. Dana White's been mentioning it for years, but they just never.
If your wife suddenly said, "I want to go to Africa for our next vacation," what country would you try to lean her towards?
Probably Morocco.
Chad.
Probably Morocco.
Most amount of white people.
I don't know if they identify as white.
Would be cool.
That seems a little. It's not all Casablanca. I don't know if you know that or not, right?
Why not Tunisia, man? You go see Tatooine.
Yeah, we could go to.
You can stay in. It's a hotel. Oh,
that's right. It is
Uncle
right.
Lars and Owen. No, you know what I'm talking about. Luke
the fuckers
Skywalker.
That the Tuscan Raiders all burned.
Luke Skywalker's aunt and uncle. Owen Lars was his name.
I mean, everyone was trying to get the fuck away from Tatooine. Why the fuck would I try to go there?
You can stay in those rooms. Yeah.
Boy, speaking of Tatooine, I'll tell you what.
Luke never got laid there in that Tatooine.
Hold on. I have to tell you about Tatooine. I went to this Comic-Con, the DC version called Awesome Con. Boy, the Jedi have let themselves go.
Oh my God!
I tell you, they don't need to worry about Tatooine. They need to worry about how many LBs they put on during the quarantine. If you know what I'm saying.
Wow!
Little Brian Campbell joke there for you.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Boy, dude, I gotta tell you, the X-Men let themselves go. Very, very, very shameful.
What's the 5th fight on this card? On this main card?
The last one would be actually the opener is the Bo Nickal fight.
Right.
And
are we giving Tresean Gore a chance? What level of resistance?
To your point about the Dricus and the Whittaker, 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 Bo Nickal.
It's MMA, but 10 out of 10.
We still haven't seen Bo Nickal be forced to kickbox for 7 straight minutes, right?
I doubt that Gore's that guy. Could be wrong. I doubt he's that guy. The last one is going to be a very interesting and fun one. Jalen Turner taking on Dan Hooker.
Yes.
That's a great fight, actually. Jalen Turner,
fun.
It was a little bit too much for him against Marcin
Gamrot.
It's Gamrot, yes, against Gamrot.
Mateus Gamrot?
No, sorry. Did I say Marcin Tybura? Mateus Gamrot. I appreciate the correction. He fell a little short against Gamrot, but in general has been on a nice-looking little ascendancy. Oh, yeah. Dan Hooker had lost 4 of 5, but then in his last fight, he gets a phenomenal win. So, Chuck, temperature on this one, did they just put it on because probably Turner's going to win? It's going to be an action fight. Why not?
I think that's true.
Right.
I think this is you feel bad for Hooker and because he keeps fighting these guys who you're like, oh,
he
man.
loves it though.
I know he loves it.
He fucking
He's
loves
going to
it.
be that guy. He's going to be that guy, but
he's got like new shin guard tats
Yeah.
and like a full back rack going
I do
on.
feel like it's like a showcase for Turner.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. How? Okay, so Hooker's only like.
I mean, I just feel like
33.
I
He's
think they
young.
like him, you know, and he's interesting. Billy fight like the way he fights and everything else.
Has Hooker become the Australian Cowboy Cerrone? That's the real question.
It's a very Brian Campbell way of.
And would this be the biggest upset
Maybe.
for a Hooker?
Although
since-
Cowboy kept winning, like he kept winning, like he was
Cowboy
going
had
streaks.
better win streaks.
Yeah.
That Iaquinta, what was that win streak he had? He had beat
Hernandez?
Iaquinta,
Yeah, he went on.
Felder.
Yes.
That was like a really
Right.
nice win streak that he put together, although somewhat disputed.
He's got the willingness of Cowboy, though. I feel like he'll do that. I think he needs to compile more victories, but I don't know. I just feel like this is a tough one for him. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a very tough one because like the thing is like Dan Hooker will wrestle Turner, but like he doesn't have Gamrot level wrestling,
Yeah.
so I feel like that will kind of not work. So he probably will have to be training on the feet. And dude, Turner is a nightmare
He's a
on
sniper.
the feet.
Yeah.
He is. I often say this: like if you like spiders as like a hobby, definitely something's wrong with you. I just want to be very clear about that.
got, like, a house
you deserve
full.
to be, go to a mental institution, but he does seem like a very nice kid, and I think he sold some of them. So
He had like 100 of them or something.
he had 100 fucking tarantulas.
Something like that. Somebody did a piece
Could
on
you
it.
imagine the dude that you reach out to on the dark web that like is like the key
That's like-
distributor, facilitator of like if you acquire 100 spiders and then you're like, holy shit, I got a problem here. I gotta offload about 75 of these. Who are you calling?
intervention.
It's some. How shady is that guy? The guy that you call to be like, hey, can you help me? Can you help
Don't
me?
you just spray him with
Arizona,
Raid or
man. They're all
something?
Yo, just kill him. You're
Just
saying?
spray him, right? Just poison him.
I like spiders about as much as I like black licorice and
Black licorice is good.
and women who smoke cigarettes.
Yeah, I'm not down on the cigarette smoking mujeres.
I don't
Not
like that.
hot at all.
But the black licorice is good. You'd agree with that, right?
No, black licorice deserves to be
Yeah, that's just awful.
shot into
All right.
space. Send that to the bottom of the ocean next to the Titanic.
You eat
Put it down
Ebola
there.
candy too, or what? You know,
Oh.
I couldn't believe people said that you aren't allowed to make fun of the dudes who died in the submarine. It's like, guys,
That's all people have
when I grew up, they were making fun of the Ethiopian, starvation.
yes,
I know.
Like, the AIDS crisis. The AIDS crisis turned into AIDS material. It just did. Brian Campbell tells us AIDS jokes all day long.
No,
it's unbelievable.
We started before the show. You had some AIDS.
No, that was just him. It was
Luke's
just all his.
got a hard 5 when it comes to AIDS, and I mean the erection he carries around telling these jokes. You know what I mean? Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for us.
I don't think you're giving much respect to the featured fights on this
What else am I
preliminary
missing,
portion.
Brian
I can read you
Robbie Lawler's on the phone.
in succession. Yeah, can we put some respect
By the way,
on the
a
great
hero of International Fight Week, his fight was the co-main event with Roy McDonald, where they had the intense face-off and
Yeah,
everything.
the one that went to the Hall of Fame. That fight,
Yes,
you mean?
that was
a good point.
International Fight Week. That was a co-main event.
Chuck, do you think one day he will come around to our side and realize that Rory versus Robbie was better than Robbie versus Condit?
What these fucking rubes just do not realize is that fight was not better. It had a really cool face-off.
It's in the Hall of
It
Fame.
had a really cool stare down.
It's in the Hall of
But the
Fame.
fight with Condit, the actual fighting content, is better with Condit.
There are 2 fights on this preliminary card that we would shoot ourselves for not mentioning. So the Robbie Lawler-Nico Price fight is certainly headlined by the idea that this is it. The former
Robbie
champion,
Lawler,
Robbie Lawler, stepping away. You got to give him credit for lingering for a while here. when
Robbie
it was
Lawler
very
has
much
had
past
a
it.
remarkable career.
A lot of layers, up and downs, a lot of reinventions. You
Dude,
know?
he had a lot. I mean, his first run in the UFC when he got triangled by Evan Tanner was a failure, and he got knocked out by Nick Diaz. And because he blew away the Tiki Ghostins of the world and everybody else, and then he got dropped with a jab by Nick Diaz. He got triangled by Evan Tanner. He goes on a sojourn, eventually finds his way back, and becomes fucking champion.
He made his UFC debut in 2002.
Butchered like the division. I mean,
Yeah.
those fights, man, took years off of each other's lives. So,
Hendricks,
I know.
and just so many. I mean, he did obviously the entire one. Willie took over eventually later, but
Even that Askren fight was nuts.
everything
dude,
about
that
what
fight
Lawler did
was
was
madness.
incredible.
Dude,
he's on
he
the
made his UFC debut 21 years ago. I know he didn't stay in the UFC that whole time, and he's been everywhere in between, but I give him so much credit. On that short list of your 2 or 3 favorite fighters to go rewatch on UFC Fight Pass, every fight he was in was fantastic for the most part. This is a fun exit against Nico Price. You know what you're going to get from it. But Robbie does have that unique resume, because there was that point where he was looked at like as the overachieving brawler. You know what I mean? Who made it high up on the Strikeforce level, but when he started to climb the UFC title ladder, there was still sort of a stigma against him.
And also, I remember like so I worked at this promotion. It's now owned by somebody else, but back then it was a Mid-Atlantic promotion. This was in the aughts. It was called the UWC, the Ultimate Warrior Challenge. Very terrible name. And they brought in Robbie Lawler. I think at the time he was either with Icon Sport, aka Super Brawl, or Strikeforce. I can't remember exactly what year that was. But I remember they paid for him and Matt Hughes because they trained together. Remember the dissolution of the Miltich fighting systems in their private facility. And so they paid for them to come out and be like the honorary guests. And Robbie Lawler fell asleep at the press conference.
I remember that.
And he did an actual like a Strikeforce event too.
I was there
like,
with Strikeforce.
There was a time when he was like he could not give a fuck less. Now he still doesn't do the media thing, but his commitment to the craft kind of came back around. Guys peak at weird times in their careers.
Stopped sparring and all that stuff. At some point, he just did spar. Remember?
Yeah, I remember when he was champion and he came by ahead of UFC 201 in 2016. He came to ESPN and Brett Okamoto happened to be in Bristol that week, so the two of us kind of. Brett interviewed Robbie, but we sat down with him for about a half hour behind the camera just shooting the shit. And I was marveled at, like, he's not a great quote. He doesn't buy into, like, the trash talk thing. He's not going to give you, he's just sort of going to do the job and walk away. But, like, any question we asked related to the fight game, oh, dude, like, what's your favorite fight? Or what about this? What about that? Everything was just sort of like, you know what, dude, I don't really care about that stuff. I just really love to fight. That was his answer to every single question about, like, who hit the hardest, man? What's it like? Tell me. I don't really know. I mean, I don't really like this stuff. He's like, I just really like to fight. He's like, I don't like doing this interview at all. No disrespect to you guys. I don't even really want to be here at all. He's like,
That's been him the whole way, though.
And that was like different from Cowboy, who was always a tough interview because you felt
he's just like me. He hates everything about MMA except the fight.
He does. I got to have to dead wrong myself before anybody else does. I mentioned that IFW doubleheader of Romero Adesanya and JJ versus Whaley. I think that was actually March right before the pandemic in 2020.
So I think Yoel fought Whittaker on one of the international fights.
But I dead wrong that.
Chuck, thanks for being here.
Thanks, this is normally the awkward part where you're like, Chuck, tell them where they can find your work.
Tell them where they can find you.
Find me. I'm on the internets. At Chuck Mindenhall.
Are you in like some sheriff deputy's like registry?
Can we go to the myth.com, MITH, and purchase that hat maybe?
Yes. No, I've been waiting for you guys to touch feet the whole time. I know, BC.
I wasn't really
God, now you're married.
Oh, wow.
BC, where can we find you aside from the alley on your knees?
No comment.
We almost got out of here with
not this. All those who are lost, Luke, are trying to be found. Is that the thing? Yeah.
I think that's fair. This has been our UFC 290 pregame preview. None of us are going to go, but if you do, have a great time. That's Brian Campbell. That's the Iceman himself, Chuck Mindenhall.
In hindsight, how would you define the talk that was had among the three of us today?
Far less stupid than it normally is.
Would you say it was
pretty informed?
a little closer to real talk?
Water this time.
Like men do?
Yeah. Glad you brought that up at the end. You almost forgot your own time. That's how long it's been.
We should call this high tea takedown.
It has been a long time.
You want to change the name? High tea?
Hey, hold on. Not a BC and LT choice. I want to point that out. Not a BC and LT choice.
Yeah.
All right.
Chuck, thank you for bringing your Coloradian spirit with us.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
no problem.
You know what people from Colorado think about all the time? Freedom and weed.
Mostly weed.
Yeah, that's true. Mostly weed.
And go Nuggets.
Go
also,
Nuggets.
Go NBA Denver team, right?
Yes.
All right, so there he is. Brian Campbell, Iceman himself, LT, Luke Thomas. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, enjoy the fights.
By Nuggets, I meant weed.
I know.
That was, yeah.